All right, man, peace. So basketball great Kevin Durant has been feeling the pressure all season. He thought that winning his first NBA championship would alleviate a lot of the pressure that was placed on him by the media in regards to whether or not he would ever be number one, which was also some pressure that was self-inflicted. He's found that even though he's won a championship, as all champions have found, all it does is create a different type of pressure. That being whether or not you can validate the previous championship. Because to be quite frank with you, the only real champions, meaning the champions of champions, are the ones who are able to do it again. So, as we know, Kevin Durant has an issue handling pressure. And the question will be if whether or not he, as well as the other mama's boy in the locker room, Draymond Green, are going to be able to temper their tempestuous nature during the playoffs, or whether they're going to implode and cost Golden State the opportunity to be a three-time champion in 4 seasons. Anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
All right, guys, rough night, though, for Kevin Durant in his return, picking up 2 quick technical fouls, which resulted in an automatic ejection. It was the 14th technical this season and his 5th ejections. He's now 2 techs away from an automatic 1-game suspension, which...
Let me say this very quickly. Anytime I've seen a player that wantonly sought to get ejected as many times as Kevin Durant has wantonly sought to be ejected this season, what that tells me is that he has emotional and mental issues. He has a difficulty solving problems. And he most likely also is trying to rebel against authority. Many of the players view the referees as authority figures who are unwelcome. If you remember Rasheed Wallace, Dennis Rodman, Gary Payton, Charles Barkley, those are some of the other players who were known for accumulating technical fouls. And oftentimes, they had issues with authority figures. Kevin Durant suddenly wants to rebel against the previous him. He was known for being the quote-unquote nice guy. And oftentimes, guys who allow themselves to assume the identity of a quote-unquote nice guy, they realize the folly of their ways when they get to a certain age or a certain maturity level, and they try to rebel against that archetype, and they oftentimes end up making fools of themselves in the process.
In which we all know could really hurt his squad. Stephen A., what's the problem with KD right now?
I've already stated it. He has emotional problems. Kevin Durant is trying to figure out what the similitude of leadership is, because he's never going to be a leader. He's trying to figure out how to mimic what he thinks a leader should look like. And he's struggling right now. Golden State really does not have a real leader. They don't. Their most verbose member of the team is Draymond Green, and he's not the best player. It's very difficult for a team when your best player is not your leader. That's kind of the problem that San Antonio is dealing with right now with Kawhi Leonard. He's by far their best player, but he's not their leader. Now, when Tim Duncan was there, he was their leader and their best player. Kobe Bryant, of course, on that second LA championship team that won back-to-back, he was their best player and their leader. Miami was not able to break through until Dwayne Wade divested the authority of the team over to LeBron James because he was their best player. So kudos to Dwayne Wade for understanding that. Golden State, unfortunately for them, the strongest personality in their locker room is not their best player. The best player is arguably Kevin Durant. As we know, the most important player is Steph Curry. But Steph is so relaxed and laid back, he does not truly have the leadership trait, even though he does have alpha male qualities. He normally is able to keep himself under wraps and maintain his cool, normally. Even though, due to him kind of submerging himself into the woke rabbit hole, he has started to lose his composure every once in a while as well for frivolity. We're all going to lose our composure at certain points. We're all human beings. But when you start to rejoice in losing control, that means that you're starting to embrace that altar of chaos. And that's very dangerous when you're trying to win a championship.
I don't want to hear that question. No disrespect to you, Matt, or Molly, or anybody else.
Okay.
Kevin Durant is not the problem here. I watched that game last night. Kevin Durant did not deserve to be ejected.
No, actually, he did deserve to be ejected, Stephen A. Smith. He did deserve to be ejected. He was looking to be ejected. He was exceptionally confrontational with the referees for the entire game. Now, he may have thought that they missed some calls, but that is when you show your maturity at the timeout. You go and speak with them. You say, hey, Watch it, watch what he does when I post up. Or look for them hacking me when I drive to the basket. That's what you do when you're mature. Now, if they continue to not make the calls that you believe you're getting fouled on, then I can understand you ratcheting it up. But Durant has issues with communication because he believes that people are out to get him for whatever reason. But that normally is what happens when you fall down the woke rabbit hole. It's very easy for you to assume the identity of victim all the time.
He is absolutely right, and anybody that don't have a conversation about Kevin Durant being the villain in this doesn't know what they're talking about. The fact of the matter is the officials are the problem here, and to some degree the league office has some level of culpability. For the interest of full disclosure, let me give a little history here. Former Commissioner David Stern, a man that I have profound respect for. I love him a lot. I just love the job that he did. Got a lot of love for Adam Silver too, but I've always had love for David Stern. Let me be very, very clear. David Stern was somebody who was religiously against the histrionics that players would engage in. One of the things that drove him absolutely nuts, and I'm talking about personal conversations on the record with David Stern, one of the things that drove him absolutely nuts, Max, was the fact that you would see guys arguing over every call.
Yes, well, that was a product of the era from the late 90s through the 2000s, what we call the flopping era. That is where LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Paul, they made their bones. Manu Ginobili, they spent the entire decade of the 2000s flopping as well as arguing every call. And that is why, quite frankly, I don't have much of a problem with the referees starting to fight back, because they have to regain control of the basketball court. Yes, people do not come to the game to see them, but at the same time, they're not just props. They deserve respect as well. They do act as officials. That means that they officiate. That means that there's a certain level of sanctity, dare I say, that is associated with their role. And you do have to respect them as long as they're doing their job. And you lose a lot of legitimacy as a complainer when you start to try to go back and forth and yell and scream about calls that you know damn well don't really exist, when you complain about fouls that you know that you committed. It just is what it is. Like if you're in a relationship and you're with a female who wants to argue about everything, after a while, even when she brings up something of importance, you tune her out. But when you know that you have a female that's normally placid and does not like any type of back and forth or arguing, and she brings something up and she seems to be emotionally invested in it, then of course you listen. Same thing with these players. They don't seem to understand that in order for their complaints, their diatribes to be taken seriously, they have to complain when there's something legitimate associated with it. So David Stern was correct, and one of the great contributions that were made to the NBA by an announcer was when Jeff Van Gundy encouraged the NBA to focus on flopping. I thought that brought a great deal of professionalism back to the NBA.
And getting on the officials even when they knew they were wrong. You know, the acting jobs and all of that other stuff that they would put forth. That appalled David Stern and raked his nerves to the nth degree. I believe that had something to do with the officials thereby being more empowered than ever before to issue these kind of technical fouls. But I don't believe that the commissioner then, nor the present commissioner, Adam Silver, meant for it to get to this point. The NBA has successfully globalized its brand. It's a worldwide phenomenon. Basketball is loved and adored and embraced the world over. The stars are the ones that have facilitated that happening. We can't celebrate the greats like Bill Russell, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Lord Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, to the Michael Jordan era and beyond. We can't pick those stars who were instrumental in elevating the NBA brand and then forget about them now because some official has an attitude.
Stephen A. Smith, none of that has anything to do with the price of tea in China. Right now we're talking about Kevin Durant and whether or not he deserved to be ejected for his performance in his first game back and his decision to rant and rave against the referee. And that was not his first altercation with a referee in that game. He was already amped up because he felt like a few other calls had been missed, and Durant is one of those people who wants to show the refs up. He's not mature enough to take the ref aside and say, watch for this or watch for that. That's how you handle that situation. And if that doesn't work, then yeah, maybe you tune the ref up a little bit. But even then, after the game, you speak with Steve Kerr, you get in contact with somebody from the NBA league office, and you have them look over the film. Because these referees, they're appraised as well. They're evaluated as well. So you can do something about it if what you're saying is correct. But you have to go through the proper channels. You can't just assume this air of entitlement because you're Kevin Durant and you think that every time you drive to the basket, you should get a call because you believe that you're the best player in the NBA right now and you're a champion. It's questionable as to whether or not you're even the best player on your team.
A Hall of Famer, a two-time champion, one of the greatest point guards in the history of the game, Isaiah Thomas, was on TNT last night, and he said it best. You know, the referee has some culpability here. You got to know when to walk away.
Yes, and so does Kevin Durant. And Isaiah Thomas, I have love for him. He has a great brain. He has one of the great basketball IQs in NBA history. He's the greatest little man to ever play. But he also projects a lot of agenda-based rhetoric. If Isaiah Thomas likes you, he's going to defend you. If he does not like you, then he will lambaste you. That's normally how he operates. He just does it in an intelligent way. And Isaiah Thomas likes Kevin Durant because Isaiah Thomas is an old head social justice warrior, and Kevin Durant is a younger social justice warrior. And I think that Isaiah Thomas is still infatuated by the MVP speech that Kevin Durant gave where he lavished praise on his mother.
You issued a technical foul. I have no problem with that. That happens. But how do you go from no tech at all in the game to instantly being ejected because you're arguing a foul call that you should have received? Kevin Durant was fouled on that play, not once, not twice, but 3 separate times on the same play. He was fouled, knocked to the ground, he got up. Sure, he was demonstrative a little bit. He was upset. Even though he was right, you can understand him getting a technical foul. But the official did not walk away. He didn't exercise a deaf ear. He literally gave him a quick hook. So 18 to 19,000 people, make no mistake about it, they didn't come through the turnstiles to watch Swaggy P. Let's be clear about that. No disrespect to Nick Young. But that's not what they're talking about here. Stars sell the game of the NBA. And when you got a star like Kevin Durant being ejected, it needs to be a pretty damn good reason.
Well, I thought that it was a good reason, Stephen A. Smith. Once again, this was not a one-off in regards to Kevin Durant's altercations with the referees that evening. He had already gotten into 2 or 3 other verbal spats with them prior to this, and he was disrespectful and demonstrative every time. Yes, I agree that it is incumbent upon the referee to decide to step away after he issues the first technical, but it's also incumbent upon the star player to show some restraint, show some decorum, and he himself walk away after he gets that first technical foul. I've seen Michael Jordan get technicals. I've seen Patrick Ewing get technicals. I've seen, Tim Duncan get technicals, even though Tim Duncan had the beef with Joey Crawford years ago in which he got tossed off the bench, but because he maintained his composure, you see how the NBA came back against Joey Crawford. So that's how you have to conduct yourself. You have to use a certain level of wisdom. If you are Kevin Durant and you believe that you're the new king of the NBA, then conduct yourself like it. Yes, a king sometimes has to roar, no doubt about it. But after you roar, after you put forth your decree, you step off. If the referee is still inept, report him.
Not something this suspect. And the fact that it is this suspect is a cause for alarm, because you cannot have an official being comfortable enough with ejecting one of the top 3 players on the planet over something like that. That is as egregious as it gets as far as I'm concerned.
I saw a push in the back by Antetokounmpo. I didn't see 3 fouls in that one drive, Stephen A. Smith. I only saw 1. I mean, 1 is enough, but it wasn't as grievous as you're making it out to be. And part of me thinks that you deciding that you're going to take the pro-Durant route here is you don't want to look like you're piling on against Kevin Durant. Also, you want to assume the side of your boy Isaiah Thomas.
concerned, it's officials overstepping their bounds, and we've seen it on numerous occasions this season. Steph Curry's been ejected, Kevin Durant's been ejected, LeBron James has been ejected.
Yeah, but
somebody has to step up and do something about it.
That's also that the NBA referees understand that we're the new crew, we're the new generation of refs, and we're going to set a new standard for what we're going to tolerate. And I don't blame them. They're human beings. They go home and they have families too. And just because you're a star player and they're just a referee does not mean that you have the right to wantonly lambaste them and verbally abuse them. That can affect them psychologically as well. They can have their stress level raised as well. People can say, well, they're getting paid enough to take all that. Nobody gets paid enough to get wantonly lambasted on a consistent basis like that. No, that's not correct.
It's got to stop.
I have no problem with the question, what is the problem with Durant? Because there is a problem. KD is thin-skinned.
Absolutely.
Period. He's insecure. He comes off that way at least. He is leading the league in ejections, in techs. I mean, let me tell you the guy who's had the most ejections in recent years. That's Rasheed Wallace.
Rasheed Wallace, he was categorically insane. There was something wrong with him. I mean, not only did he look for reasons to have some type of controversial occurrence with the referees, he oftentimes did it at the expense of his team and the score. He was so infatuated with trying to act as if he was smarter than he really was that he cost his team a finals in 2005 when he missed his assignment and allowed Robert Horry to get open. So yes, Rasheed Wallace was a great player. I would put him in the category of great because many of his peers would call him that. If you were to ask Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki, Chris Webber, if Rasheed Wallace was a great player, they would say yes. So I would have to agree with them, even though his numbers may not show that. But Rasheed was a player that you would have had to have watched play to understand how impactful he was, especially with his basketball IQ. But sometimes your gift is also your curse. Sometimes you're a little bit too smart for your own good, and you can cost yourself and your team when you don't know how to curtail your brain. And that's what happened with Mr. Rasheed Wallace. Oftentimes, one time too many.
KD right now is tied with Charles Barkley in a single season. So, I mean, listen.
Yeah, we know Charles Barkley's a nut job.
Listen, all great players. Rasheed Wallace is a great player. Charles Barkley, obviously a great player. KD, obviously a great player. But in each case, they had certain behavioral issues on the court. I mean, we know what Rasheed Wallace was about, Charles Barkley, but we don't perceive Kevin Durant, or at least didn't perceive him like that early on because it was easy to fall into the narrative because he was playing in Oklahoma City. Kind of like a country kid who's quiet and nice and everyone likes KD, and that may be true, but he's an intense competitor, and his gifts will put him in the spotlight, but some are more prepared just kind of naturally for the spotlight than others.
I agree with that, and let me also say this. He is going to be a problem in the playoffs. I do believe that there are going to be some occurrences in the playoffs where it's going to be very tenuous as to whether or not Kevin Durant and or Draymond Green will be available to perform because of their emotional instability. Both of them are very easy to provoke, especially Kevin Durant. He's even easier to provoke than Draymond.
Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, their gifts put them in the spotlight, and they had the personalities to handle it. KD is gifted like that, but his personality doesn't handle the attention quite as well.
Well, Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan were raised in very strong patriarchal backgrounds. That's why they were able to handle stress to such a high degree. They seem to actually seek after stressful situations to show their masculinity, to show their manhood. Almost like in the ancient world, a great general or a great conqueror, he would look for wars to show his valor. That's how Jordan and Kobe were. They sought out those moments. They lived for those moments. Kevin Durant, that's why I state that he is seeking the similitude of an alpha male, because he'll never know what that's about, because that's just not ingrained in him. It's just not. Now, when he gets to be about 33, 34, he'll reach that level where LeBron is at right now, where the game will slow down for him. And due to the fact that he'll see certain plays happening before they happen, that will bring an ease of mind to his play, even though he will have lost a step. Hopefully by then he will have started to take his physical conditioning as far as his muscle development a little bit more seriously. Now, we all know that people have different body types. Everyone does not pack on muscle like everyone else. But there's no way that you're going to tell me that he trains physically hard. He may train hard on his conditioning in regards to his aerobic conditioning, but anaerobically, he's not doing what he's supposed to do in the gym. There's no way.
Well, and so, listen, he's had burner Twitter accounts. He's had beef with people in the media, Stephen A. Smith. He's ejected more than anybody else. Now, it'd be one thing if you said the refs don't know when to walk away. Well, okay, but that applies to everyone. And
absolutely.
And all the stars. Why is it KD who is leading the league in ejections? And if you watch that play, KD was right to be mad. He was fouled clearly on his way to the basket, and the ref blew it. Wasn't called. The play is still going on.
Absolutely. But you know why he lost it? Because he feels like he's not being respected by the referees. He thought that winning the championship last year would put him in a lofty position where he would get every call every time he drove to the lane, that he was going to start getting the Kobe treatment. I don't think anybody expects the Jordan treatment, but I thought that KD believed he was going to start getting the Kobe LeBron treatment from the referees in regards to esteem. Now, we know that LeBron also is oftentimes the recipient of an unfair whistle because of his size. But I think that KD expected a little bit more this season, and he's not finding it. I also believe that he understands that winning a championship has added a different type of pressure that he was not aware of. Because many great players will tell you, especially after they win the first championship, that it's a different type of pressure trying to validate the first one by winning the second one.
KD is over on the baseline arguing with the ref, approaching the ref. KD, the play's still going on. That doesn't, his focus is so shifted by that. Watch.
Once he got up, I'm saying the play was still going on, but he approached the ref after Go ahead.
No, the ball was still moving around.
See what I'm saying? I see what you're saying. So when the ref blew his whistle is when it stopped. I got you, Max.
Right, but he's still, so...
Okay, I might see 2 fouls there, because Antetokounmpo pushed him in the back, and I think Bledsoe also pushed him in the back.
So, KD, he doesn't have to understand it, but it's the truth. People in the media want to like KD.
I don't think that that's relevant. I don't think that whether or not the people in the media want to like him or not is relevant. I think that Kevin Durant is struggling with something that a lot of internet revolutionaries and woke Negroes are struggling with. He's struggling with the lack of understanding as to why he's seeking validation from others as opposed to being validated by his own understanding of himself. He has to create his own criteria for himself to validate himself. And when he understands that, he'll stop being so mentally unstable, so capricious. He's taken on the habit after these games where he gets kicked out of saying, "Oh, well, I apologize. It's not going to happen again." And then it happens in 2 more weeks. Because he's dealing with certain self-image issues, which a lot of woke Negroes are dealing with.
KD, there's something about him that is likable, but that doesn't mean he's not also thin-skinned. He is. And
well, shit, he's just thin in general. The man looked like he'd been walking through the deserts of Somalia for the last 10 years.
And he does not take criticism well. He does not take kindly to blown calls. What do you think?
I think that you'll find that most people who are geniuses at their craft don't take criticism well. Because I think that their understanding is that people who critique them could never do what they do. They don't watch how hard they work, and they don't understand their hustle. They don't understand their struggle. That's understandable. But you also have something called the curse of the gifted, where you have to put up and tolerate things from people who you may not believe are on your level. Because to whom much is given, much is required.
What do you think? The refs only blow the calls on KD? Is he somehow less respected than other superstars? You know how often LeBron is going to the rim and doesn't get a call because he's so big and strong?
That's true, but you already answered your own question. He's so big and strong. Once again, LeBron James is he's the Wilt Chamberlain of this era. He's the Shaq of this era. For his position. That's truly what he is. And that's why I put LeBron over both of them, by the way. Because he's considered the most physically dominant player of his era, and he's not a center. That's the only reason why I put LeBron over Shaq and over Wilt. And by the way, Wilt was the greatest athlete to ever play in the NBA. Not LeBron. Not Michael. Wilt Chamberlain.
KD is going to have to learn. Look, if you curse out a ref, what do you think's going to happen? And then you don't walk away, you might get tossed. Why is he getting tossed more than anyone else?
Well, let me say this, Max. There are very, very few people on the planet Earth that's qualified to speak to KD's sensitivity better than me. Let's say that, okay? I think that's a safe bet to say, considering, the verbal sparring that he and I have had on occasion.
And I don't believe that there are many who are more qualified to speak on your own sensitivity than KD. Because you basically got on TV and looked in the camera and issued some type of verbal threat that you were going to expose him in some way just because he decided that he was going to state that you put out a story that you did not get from him. And you got that upset. But why are you really upset, Stephen A. Smith? Not just at KD, but many of these athletes in the NBA, because it's very clear that many of them don't want to talk to you for whatever reason.
Mention it. People in the media he's had beef with.
But what I'm saying to you is, even with that said, I can stand here and come to this man's defense. Because the fact of the matter is he was wronged last night. And he's been...
Allegedly, he was wronged.
He's been wronged on several occasions this year. There were a couple of times he didn't deserve to be ejected. The fact of the matter is, you could point to the thin skin, and I'm not denying that he has thin skin at times. Of course, we've lamented that on occasion.
Yes, and you have thin skin a lot more times than even he does, and that's saying something.
But that doesn't make the quality of his argument dissipate in any way. The fact is, if you're getting fouled, remember, when LeBron got ejected, there was no excuse to eject LeBron James. What I'm saying to you is...
Sure, it was an excuse. LeBron James bum rushed the referee and started yelling in his face. Stephen A. Smith, these people are human beings. Once again, you get that first technical, and you as the athlete, you're as responsible for continuing the interaction as the referee is. Both are just as responsible.
Is you're pointing to the sensitivity of Kevin Durant. I'm saying if you look at the collective behavior of the officials, it's become so alarming that they were going to meet with the players, or they met with the Players Association during All-Star Weekend, because we're seeing behavior exercised by them where we can make the argument they're more sensitive than the players.
I don't know if they're more sensitive, or maybe now they've just become as sensitive, or maybe now they just decided they're not going to take the players' shit anymore. That happens in life. Sometimes when you're taking corrective measures, you have to overdo things to let people understand that, no, that's not the type of party anymore.
Let's put it this way. Let's agree with that premise. Let's take for granted the fact something's going on with the refs, right? So if what you take from this latest incident is, hey, the refs need to be addressed, my question is, why is it KD who is leading the league in ejections? Are they blowing more calls on him than anyone else? It doesn't seem that way to me.
Can I answer that? I'd like to answer that question. I'd like to answer that question.
KD?
I'd like to ask you that. I'd like to answer that question. And let me give you just a little tidbit of information about the game of basketball in this respect, Max. When you are that great of a player, but you're also that skinny, guess what?
Guess what? That's a you problem. If Antetokounmpo can put some muscle on, KD could do the same thing. Or maybe KD just don't want to use the PEDs that a lot of these other guys are using. Who knows? But I don't look at Antetokounmpo and see him as someone who may blatantly be using PEDs, but he may be on something as well. I don't want to cast aspersions on him because his name has not been on any lists. But it's obvious to me that KD has not been putting in the work anaerobically as many of these other players. He has not been working on any type of muscle building. And he does need to put on some girth, some mass, so that when he drives to the basket, he doesn't get knocked off balance as much as he does. Because he has great natural balance, and he is a great natural finisher. If he was a little stronger physically and had the physique, not of a LeBron, I mean, really nobody's going to have the physique of LeBron. He's a genetic freak, and on top of that, he's using the best PEDs on the market, allegedly.
Invite a level of physicality, because that's the only damn way anybody can stop you. So as a result of that, okay, put a hat on him, do this to him, do that to him. So he may very well be in a position where he has more validity to his complaints.
Let me ask you this.
To you.
Right, but Stephen A. Smith, many of your points are valid, but once again, it becomes incumbent upon Kevin Durant to adjust to the way that the defenses are playing him. Whatever your weaknesses are, you have to controvert the way that defenses play you by turning your weaknesses into strengths. Michael Jordan at one time was also rather slightly built, even though he was very strong, even though he was slight. But he would get beat down and worn down because his anaerobic conditioning was not as good as his aerobic conditioning. He had to build up his physique. And once he did, he was able to take his game to the next level. He became a champion. Kevin Durant is already a champion, but he's a pseudo alpha. He shares leadership on that team with two other players, Draymond from a mental level and Steph from a skill level. If he truly wants to ascend to that highest level, he has to build up his physique. And I think that he'll find that he'll be able to channel his aggression better if he was in better condition muscularity-wise. He would feel less like he was being bullied. He conducts himself like somebody who feels like he's getting bullied.
You. Hold on. My only point, because I'm coming with a question to you. My only point to you would be this. When you look at the officials, Max, it does not alarm you that 18, 19,000 people can walk through the turnstiles and pay to see a product that we all know is sold and leans on heavily and marketed by and literally dependent on the stars. It doesn't alarm you that officials can have no regard for that?
I'd like to see.
I think that the officials did have regard for that. I think that you would have to be in their shoes for a season to get an understanding of what they deal with. And I think that it's right for them to put their foot down to a degree, because many of these players have gotten away with a bit too much. They've been way too flagrant with a lot of their protests on certain calls that are blatant. And if you allow yourself to get bullied over calls that are blatant or non-calls that are blatant, when you know that you're correct, it sets a very bad precedent.
I'd like to see the stars stay in the game. I sometimes get the feeling that they realize that too and take some liberties.
Absolutely. Ding.
Liberties. If you curse out a ref, you're getting teed up. If you stay in his face, you're getting teed up again and tossed.
Absolutely.
Everyone knows this, but KD keeps getting tossed.
That's not true.
1, 2, LeBron James. You think KD gets fouled going to the rim and not called more than LeBron? To me, it seems like LeBron, if anything, gets that more. But he's not getting ejected all the time.
No, but I think it affects KD more. I think it affects... No, listen.
That means that's a him problem, Stephen A. Smith. That's a him problem. He has to adjust. He's been in the league for what now? 10, 11 years? Get in the gym.
Listen, Max,
if you're going to have to learn how to deal with that.
Hold on. Max, if you're a muscle-bound dude with muscles coming out of your earlobes, it's going to affect you a little bit less than a dude that's a tad bit heavier than Manute Bol.
That means that you have to get in the gym, Stephen A. Smith. He called Kevin Durant Manute Bol. And hey, that's why I made that analogy to that comparison to Kevin Durant looking like he's from the deserts of Somalia. You know, that Horn of Africa region where a lot of them Cushites come from, and them ancient Egyptians come from. Kevin Durant has that body type. He looks like he comes from the South Sudan somewhere. You know, just walking through the plains with a long spear and a sash on, trying to hunt a lion.
Hold on.
God rest his soul. I mean, come on now.
But if you're the big strong guy, you're going to have to deal with it more often, not less often. And here's the bottom line, Stephen A. What's the problem with KD? Then your answer might be, hey, he's a skinny dude who's going to get, part of the strategy is going to be, put a body on him on the way to the basket and, put something on him, and he's not going to be happy about it. But going into the playoffs, he's going to have to be aware of it, right?
Absolutely. Ding.
Right? I mean, that is an issue he's going to have to deal with better than he's dealt with during the regular season.
Max,
or the Warriors, who are already in trouble, don't have a shot.
Max, you're not holding the officials accountable. The great Hall of Fame officials in NBA history, they will sit up there and they will tee you up, and then they'd warn you, they'd tell you to get away from them, to shut up, watch your mouth, and they'll walk away from you. They don't just sit up there and tee you up inside of 5 seconds.
Let me ask you this.
Well, maybe they're doing that during the regular season and they're going to take a different tack during the postseason. I do believe that they're trying to make a point to these players that we're a new crew. This is a new generation of referees, and we're not going to take your bullshit. A lot of you guys act like a bunch of spoiled bitches on the basketball court. The conduct that was tolerated by the previous generation of officials, we're not going to tolerate. Just like this generation of players says that we're going to be more socially active. We're going to question everything. You can't get mad when the officials take that same tact.
Are the officials
do that, Max?
So I agree with you. The officials are doing what do. Yup, the officials are doing what you're claiming. And now the question is, what does KD want to do about it? Right? Remember what Mills Lane used to say about it? Stephen A. Remember what Mills Lane? Why are you not asking what the league should do about it? Remember what Mills Lane used to say on his Judge show? He said, "I'm not final because I'm right. I'm right because I'm final. KD want to take it to the league in the offseason, fine. But this is the way it is right now. What's he going to do about it heading into the playoffs?
This is not the NFL. Hold on, this is not the NFL. You don't have to wait until the offseason. The fact of the matter is, the league office, which obviously, I mean, the officials answer to somebody, you can sit up there and remind those officials, look, this stuff is important. You're going to eject somebody of that magnitude. Excuse me, you got to have a better case than you did last night. Stop the nonsense. You can do that right now. It doesn't have to wait until the offseason. You can do that right now.
Right
now.
Calm down.
Yeah, but I mean, Stephen A. Smith, first we have to evaluate and establish what exactly KD said to that guy.
Yeah, it was, the news was out. I did not see it, and then I got it confirmed by some sources here. KD was thrown out of the game, Max, after the initial technical foul was called against him, because he went up to the official, Trey Maddox, and he called them the B word and ass in the middle of that, and then the N word. And so once he did that, this African-American official on the baseline with fans in earshot hearing that immediately threw the hook. Based on that, that would warrant the ejection. I cannot, no matter how much I feel about these officials with the quick hooks, when you say something like that, that warrants the ejection. I stand corrected.
And if I was the official, I would have said, are you kidding me? You're calling me that? I must have a mirror hanging in front of my face because you put the B in bitch ass nigga. Like, give me a break. Kevin Durant calling somebody that? Like, no disrespect to the brother Kevin Durant, but I mean, he looks like he cries at Disney movies. Like, come on.
All right, guys, let's get it.
But anyway, that's the issue with KD. And I think that it is an important issue to be aware of, especially as we head into the NBA playoffs, just to see if he and Draymond Green will be able to transcend their emotional issues and assist their team in repeating as champions. But anyway, peace.